And they're using this massive investment in neuroscience to figure out how to do that. And a lot of these techniques are what they're doing, things to make people apathetic, things to make people... You know, I have a friend of mine who worked for the NSA as a debriefer of Soviet defectors. And he told me about all the different drugs they had discovered that could make you change your entire attitude, where anti-communists would become communists. It would completely reverse everything you believed in. That these drugs existed, and they're even more sophisticated now, and techniques are more sophisticated now. And Delgado said, I no longer have to implant electrodes in people's head. We can do it at a distance by methods like you were just discussing.
Well, that's right. Back in the 1950s, they had these patented in the U.S. alone, and not to mention what's classified. But the thing I saw like 7 years ago, it was in the Baltimore Sun. They said, DARPA that invented the Internet, they're putting up towers to soothe the public, and it was like a weird test bubble. And then it says, this is out of Spectrum Online, which is for tech insiders, mainline magazine, and it says how great it is that, sound waves for brain waves, and it says they can control the public. And then I have CBS Newscast where they say they're going to start doing this to prisoners to reform them. I mean, this is open mind control. The towers are now up, and you tell people this, and they roll their eyes at you.
Well, it's absolutely true. I can tell you, I spent a lot of time reading neuroscience literature, and these techniques are being developed, and the government is very, very interested in these, and it's being funded by these major foundations.
Unbelievable.
Because this has always been a dream of theirs, is to control human thinking.
Well, the Pentagon says 90% of war is mind war now.
Right.
Exactly. And folks, I mean, we're not in Kansas anymore. We're in a lot of trouble. Let's take some calls. Jen in Georgia, you're on the air. Welcome.
Hello?
Hi, you're on the air with Dr. Blaylock.
Hi. Oh my goodness, I'm getting really excited. Finally, he took my call. I'm trying to collect my thoughts together. Well, I'm sorry to be a little off topic because I don't have any questions for the doctor right now.
Okay, be real quick then. I'm going to move on to some other folks.
I will be real quick. I have a question about the previous guest that was on your show. He was the author who wrote the book about Obama being a postmodern coup. Now,
that's Webster Tarpley.
Yeah, Webster, him. Well, he said that, on previous shows, I don't know exactly what date, he was on the show, and he said that over 40% of the people who voted against Obama voted against fascism, when, in fact, I don't think, if he's referring to the people who voted for John McCain,
Ma'am,
that is not true.
Listen, I appreciate your call. I'm trying to take calls pretty much for the doctor. Let me try to explain something. There's a psychological dictatorship. We're living in a highly controlled, scientifically designed, the elite openly call it the final revolution. Okay, where, in the words of Bertrand Russell, who said they would inject us with mercury to brain damage us at birth, he said a rebellion by the proletariat, the general public, would be as impossible as a rebellion of sheep against the practice of eating mutton or lamb chops. They see us. We're almost at that point where it isn't about Obama. You know, he's a puppet. McCain's a puppet. We're pointing out that Obama is the heir apparent. Pat Robertson's now endorsing him to fool the people to going along with the next phase of collectivism. Dr. Blaylock?
I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Everybody looks at the president. The president is an empty suit. He's being manipulated by the foundations. They decide policy. The president doesn't. The Congress doesn't. Nobody in the government really makes any decisions. And if you look at Congress now, they're paralyzed. I talked to Bob Barr privately a couple of years ago. And I asked him, I said, when they stole all these FBI files, is that what's keeping Congress under control? He said, absolutely. He said, they have dirt on everybody. They know what everybody's done, and they're all terrified to resist in any way.
And that's what the surveillance state's about. Okay, ma'am, look, it's way past that. Okay, it's way past that. Was that Jen or Sherry I just went to? Okay, I'm sorry. I was calling Jen Sherry. Now we go to Sherry. I apologize, Sherry. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, Alex. Hi, Dr. Blaylock.
Hi.
I have a question for you, Doctor. Is there any legitimate medical reason why 67% of children in foster care would be on those drugs would there be any reason besides total control?
The federal government says it's for eugenics, but I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Blaylock.
Now, on drugs for what?
67%, a national average, of foster children are on SSRIs.
Oh, yeah, and, if you look in the physician's desk reference, it says that children shouldn't be on SSRI, that they induce psychosis, they induce a higher incidence of suicide, homicidal thought patterns, so they know that. The SSRI is a very bad medication, and if the FDA was real, if it was really a regulatory agency, it would have been removed long ago.
And, Doctor, as you know, in the trials of the first big one by Eli Lilly in the early 1980s of the SSRI Prozac, they admitted internally that it caused massive increases in psychopathic breaks, homicide, suicide, but they went ahead and approved it.
The girl hung herself, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you see, this is what I talk about in the film Nutrition and Behavior, is that most of the things we see in children that have to do with abnormal behavior are due to a poor diet and toxin exposure. And that if you change that, most of these children undergo a radical improvement in their behavior.
Really?
And by the way, let me stop you. Even mainline studies that you see in the press occasionally admit that getting them off dyes, getting them off processed sugars, getting them exercise has massive, better numbers than Prozac, which they even show is detrimental. Go ahead.
Well, all this is in the mainline peer-reviewed journals. It's not, from something in alternative medicine. This is in mainline medicine.
Did you see the latest?
The fact that most physicians don't read this.
Did you see the latest?
They don't read the research journals. They're not even aware of this.
Did you see the latest number from 2008 that 100 million prescriptions for SSRIs in 2008 in the U.S.?
Oh, absolutely. And when Bush had the program where it was going to have all the children examined psychologically and have them placed on medication if they needed it.
New freedom.
This is absurd. That's not the function of the federal government, to have people psychologically evaluated and placed on medication.
But that's
something as dangerous as SSRI medication.
But that's what the eugenicist Aldous Huxley, whose brother later ran the UN, Julian Huxley, who became the head of the Eugenist Society and the head of the Transhumanist, he said they would drug the public. That's where THX 1138 and Brave New World come from, because that was the plan, and now they've got 100 million people on them.
Sure. I mean, in the book Brave New World, they talked about the drug Soma, and that you would calm people down, and then you'd have another drug to excite them when you wanted them excited, and when you wanted them apathetic, you put them back on the Soma again.
And now they even have an SSRI on the market, Doctor, called Soma.
Absolutely. And his book, Brave New World Revisited, goes into the nonfiction description of all of these things.
Hold on, Doctor. We're going to skip this break for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers. Stay with us, ladies and gentlemen. Infowars.com.
Have you ever thought about what's in your
I'm going to skip this
shampoo?
break, Network. Okay, thank you. Anything else you wanted to add, Sherry in Texas, to Dr. Blaylock?
No, that was it. That pretty much answered my question for me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Robert in California. Robert, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, hello?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Dr. Blaylock. I have a question regarding vaccines. What would you recommend to people who've already taken vaccines, like natural chelation, natural therapy, something along those lines?
Well, if you've taken vaccines that have mercury, I would recommend being tested for mercury.
Right. How about people who can't really afford seeing a doctor or?
Well, the hair testing for most people would be sufficient.
Isn't it very inexpensive comparatively?
It's very inexpensive, and you don't need a doctor's permission to do it. So you can get your hair tested for mercury levels.
So if he does have higher mercury, what does he do?
Well, a lot of things neutralize mercury toxicity in the brain because it's very difficult, and some people think impossible, to remove mercury from the brain once it's in the ionic form. Selenium neutralizes mercury toxicity. Quercetin helps neutralize it. Many of the flavonoids, like curcumin, all of these things are available now as supplements.
Right. How about hormones? I know you take several hormones. How about those with like low thyroids? What would you recommend?
Well, you know, if you have low thyroid, of course, you need supplementation to bring it back up to normal.
Right.
But you know, removing at DMSA, you can use it as a very slow removal over a long period of time. Alpha lipoic acid helps remove mercury from the brain. So does magnesium.